Welcome to Historically Speaking, a program about our community's history, sponsored by members of the Bolingbrook Historic Preservation Commission and Bolingbrook Community Television. The Historic Preservation Commission was established by the Village of Bolingbrook in 1993 to preserve Bolingbrook's rich heritage. Today we have a total of 16 members, many who are in the studio audience. Say hello. Hello. Bill Cole is the chair, and I serve as the commission's liaison. The Bolingbrook Historic Preservation Commission's mission is to collect and maintain a comprehensive database on Bolingbrook's history, its people, places, structures, and events, and to make this information available to all of our residents. Today's history topic is Old Chicago, which I personally think is a crowd pleaser. And our guest panel is as follows: Judy Bredaway, Roseanne Pickering, Karen Gibson, Jean Barker, and later on in the show, Don Grigas is going to join us. My name is Carol Penning, Bolingbrook clerk, and today's program's host. I've been in Bolingbrook since 1977 and have worked for the village since 1978. It has been an awesome experience, and during that time, Old Chicago has always been a topic of discussion. It's a subject that intrigues people, and as such, the Commission has collected many Old Chicago memorabilia. It's been very exciting for me as village clerk because I have a side dream, idea, whatever, of being a teacher, and, so many people come to Village Hall and they are working on their college credits, degrees, whatever, and it's amazing how many of them choose Old Chicago as a subject. So we have plenty of information to provide to them, and like I said, it's a crowd pleaser. So at this time, I'm going to ask each member of the panel to briefly tell us a little bit about yourself and what your connection was to Old Chicago. We will talk more a little bit later about your Old Chicago memories and experience in the program. So I'm going to start at this end.
Okay. I'm Jean Barker, and I was the chief of security at Old Chicago. I was there from the beginning until just about the end. So that was a wonderful job.
And I'm Karen Gibson. She had a lot more to say, I thought, but she will.
Well, we're going to give her plenty of time to say
I'm Karen
more.
Gibson. I'm a registered nurse, and I was the manager of the First Aid Station, Lost Children, Safety, and Insurance at Old Chicago.
And you're wearing tonight?
And I'm wearing, well, it kind of looks like an Old Chicago uniform, but this scarf I've had for all these years. I've kept a scarf and a hat. My husband has a tie, actually, that says Old Chicago. It's in pretty good shape, wouldn't you say?
It is, yeah. I'm looking at it.
like
It looks pretty good to me.
I'm Roseanne Pickering. I worked down in the amusement park between my junior and senior year of high school, running the rides and selling balloons, and just doing general amusement park type jobs.
It's Judy.
And I'm Judy Bredaway, and I was a village trustee from 1975 to 77 and sat on the board when Bob Brindle was asking us to open up the center, the Old Chicago Center. We were kind of the meanies once in a while. And so I remember a lot of the early history and how it affected the village.
Before I continue on, I just have to make a comment. I'm kind of excited. I've never taken the liberty before to use any of the Old Chicago the items we receive. Sometimes we get one or two or three, we collect, and it all adds up, which is very nice, the items that we have. But tonight, I'm actually have my water in an Old Chicago mug, And I just am going to talk a little bit about Old Chicago before we actually get into your personal memories and experiences. But Old Chicago was a combination shopping mall and indoor amusement park. It was the world's first completely enclosed park and promised to put Bolingbrook, and it was promised that it would put Bolingbrook on the map.
It did.
And it did, Judy said. It was located just north of I-55 on Route 53, which at that time was still Route 66. Route 66, excuse me. Presently, it was located where the Arena Auto Auction is located today, on the majority of the original Old Chicago property. Old Chicago consisted of a large square building with a dome in the center. The rides and attraction, the Old Chicago Fairgrounds, were in the center under the dome, and the shopping area surrounded them. When it opened in 1975, part of the grand opening celebration included dome dancer Michelle, and I believe it's pronounced Mothe, a Bolingbrook resident who tap danced in the drizzle on the very top of the dome. No, thank you. God bless her. I'm hoping to meet her someday if we can track her down just to kind of get a feel of what that experience was like. We found one picture where you could actually see her on the dome, very, very itty bitty, and there's a helicopter hovering above, so kind of interesting. Various events took place at Old Chicago during its short history, including holiday fireworks, displays and radio station promotional appearance, the Jerry Lewis Muscular Dystrophy Telethon, which took donations from inside the park. Many rock bands and singers appeared at Old Chicago as well. Old Chicago seemed like an idea that would have been successful in retrospect. However, it's easy to see why it wasn't. Even though it was ahead of its time, the mall consisted solely of small specialty shops and restaurants, and without any large chain stores or anchor stores, it wasn't enough of a shopping mall to attract shoppers. Once the novelty wore off, the building didn't seem to attract repeat visitors, except those who attended special events or lived relatively nearby. The cost of operating the building year-round was also very high. When Marriott's, now Six Flags, Greater America opened in 1976, it didn't help much either, because already at that time, bigger, better was already what the kids wanted, and once they started seeing the more exciting rides, they weren't interested. Old Chicago never did well financially, and this culminated in the abrupt closing of the ride area in 1980. The mall with just a handful of stores stayed open while efforts were made to find a new owner. Nothing came of it, however, and the entire building closed for good in 1981 as our Old Chicago. As the next 5 years passed, the building gradually fell into ruin. Officials were reluctant to demolish it, and everyone hoped that both a new owner and a new use for the building would eventually be found. Several ideas were considered: a gambling casino, a convention center, a retail outlet mall, and a movie soundstage were just a few of them. Sadly, none of these ideas panned out, and the building was finally torn down in 1986. Currently, all that remains from Old Chicago is a street named Old Chicago Drive. I'm just going to mention a couple of things on the timeline. In June of 1973, Robert Brindle brings a watercolor print of his proposal, Old Chicago Town, to the Bolingbrook Plan Commission. He proposes a 345,000 square foot complex that will include outdoor type amusement rides ringed by stores. He promised to put Bolingbrook on the map, as we said before. "We don't expect any of the big merchandising giants here," said Brindle. "Shops are to be of the specialty variety." The Lions arrived to take up their guardian position at the grand entrance of Old Chicago in 1975. And that same month, in June, an estimated 15,000 attended the two-day opening ceremonies following a last-minute inspection by village officials. Construction crews worked around the clock to pass inspection. Old Chicago's post office opened in 1975, replacing the Osco substation. The new post office carries its own distinctive postmark. In that same year, the comedy king of air, 56-year-old Jimmy Troy, falls 20 feet to his death from the trapeze in an aerial accident of the Old Chicago Circus, which again was a major setback for them. Annual payroll for the park, and it was in excess of $3.5 million. The amusement tax is bringing the village at that time $200,000 to $300,000 each year, plus $120,000 in sales tax, which obviously was a great revenue source for the village of Bolingbrook in order to pay for services and things of that nature. Meanwhile, they were keeping a watchful eye on what was going on in Gurnee with Six Flags. The Bolingbrook JCs staged their third annual fireworks display at Old Chicago, accompanied by a parachuter and midget racers. And then, of course, in October 1977, which is pretty a popular thing, we hear it all the time. Wasn't the movie Fury filmed there? Well, the Hollywood movie director Brian De Palma became the first person to try to demolish Old Chicago. While shooting a scene for his film, The Fury, De Palma and his special effects crew sent a part of the ride, the paratrooper, crashing through the window of the beer garden. Extras in the movie, including several Bolingbrook residents, may be seen if you look closely at the 2-minute sequence, the immortalization, the Old Chicago film. And then, of course, there were DJs there and a lot of other things. And we have a timeline that is on the our Bolingbrook Historic Preservation website. And that timeline gives a very extensive, it's almost 5 pages in length, from the beginning to the end of Old Chicago's reign. So at this time, I'd like to ask each one of you, if I may, if you could talk about some of your experiences, your memories, you know, things that you enjoyed, you know, things of that nature. So I'll start with you.
Okay. Well, it was basically a city within a city.
Yeah.
You had your city hall people, which were all the bosses. You had your residents, you had your workers. Gosh, we had marriages, we had divorces from it. You made many friends, you lost friends. We had anywhere from a lost child to shootings. Met tons and tons of stars. An extremely exciting job. I mean, many times Karen and I always say we would have worked there for free because it was great. So, and we're sitting batting our heads against the wall now trying to remember some of the people's names that we were so close to at the time that why now have we forgotten? I don't know. I mean, I guess age. I mean, that's got to be
Well, we
it.
wanted to look for them because we want to have a reunion.
Yeah, we want to have a big Old Chicago reunion. And as a matter of fact, I love Old Chicago so much, we just completed a Christmas room in our house, 10 feet by 17 all year round, and one part of the Christmas room is Old Chicago. And we actually had a sign maker make the sign just like their logo, and we have the amusement park rides and the mall and everything.
That sounds wonderful.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
You should really, at some point, if you could take a picture, and
Oh,
we
I
would
have
love
some.
to, yeah, we would love to see that, actually.
Oh, great.
That's great.
Yeah.
So any friends or, you know, long time, I know you said a lot of the employees, you can't remember names,
I
but
started there not just as a security officer in the beginning. I wasn't chief at the time. Karen was the head nurse, and needless to say, first aid and security goes very much hand in hand. And so that was where we met, and we're still, well, best friends today. So that is one relationship that you know, came to be and grew since that time. And talk about the Fury. My children were extras in that. So were Karen's
my
brothers.
brothers, yeah.
Yep. So we got them. They were extras in the Fury. Had tons of fun talking to Frankie Blondes and you know all of them, and it was very exciting. So not only was I chief of security then, after a time, I also had the shooting gallery in the amusement park with the big buzzer that went "Ooh," and the piano player, you know. So I had that too.
yeah, that's really interesting. Do you want to say
Well-
some of your experiences,
I
Karen?
said it was interesting because it was like a city, and we took care of people that not only had food allergies, but had all kinds of minor injuries, some major injuries. As you said, I was there when Jimmy Troy fell off of the trapeze in front of 5,000 kids that we also had to take care of. And there were some people that we could save and some people that we couldn't. But, you know, it was a very interesting job, and like she said, we met a lot of stars, and the first person they usually met when they got off was security would pick them up, and then they'd want to see the nurse, because they'd lose their voices when they got off the plane from LA, and they'd come here, and it'd be cold winter or something like that. So Gene and I mean, we dealt with Bobby Rydell and Gary U.S. Bonds and Susan from Sesame Street, wasn't she from Sesame Street? And jazz players and the fan dancer Sally Rand and everybody of all ages. Patsy,
Oh, yeah.
Captain Marvel,
Vincent
Carmine.
Price.
Vincent Price, oh,
Vincent
yes,
Price,
yeah.
they opened
absolutely.
the haunted
'Cause
house.
he
And of
did
course, on
honors.
the Fury, and you know, we always had to be prepared in case there were any injuries. Of course, the window that they used in the Fury was made out of special plastic so
sure
that
it was.
nobody would get hurt when they, you know, threw the car through it. But it was very interesting. We had many different CEOs. Things changed. Bob Brindle was a very sophisticated, wonderful man. Unfortunately, due to cost overruns, he was ousted. And then we did get people from Disney and people from SeaWorld and
Don't forget
people.
Willie Ames.
Oh, Willie Ames, yeah, from Eight Is Enough. He brought his band there. And actually, I was there taking care of him. There were girls trying to break into his room. There were girls trying to get at him. They were pulling my lab coat off. I was holding up a chair in front of me. They were sitting in it. And I had to spend the whole evening, most of the night with him because he had some
Oh.
voice problems.
A little bit too much information.
His mother was there, too.
Okay, all right, I feel better now.
His mother was there too. And then the next day we went down, you remember Lee Phillip? Well, we met her at Old Chicago
Ah.
too, and she had him on the show. And it was funny because I was sitting in the audience. I think, were you there? I think you were there. I don't know.
No, I didn't go
Anyways,
there.
oh, there's my nurse, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot of long-term. George, I can't remember George's last name.
Condom? No.
Yeah, something like
Wait,
that.
that doesn't sound right.
Oh,
God, leave it to me.
He was the
Something
one
like
who
that.
developed the Marilyn Monroe picture where the air was flying up under her dress and everything.
Oh, how interesting.
And he got into a traumatic situation one day with one of the CEOs, and they had kind of a rough fight up in the executive office, and most of the other executives ran in their offices and closed the door, and they called Gene and I to break up the fight and take care of the injuries. He said the two women were in there and all the guys were not. But most of the time it was mostly fun. Buddy Farnon was there. He was a magician. Billy Bishop, you know, they created a lot of different shows and theater things, and I got to take my niece there. She had her own private show one night in the theater. The kids all loved it. My brothers worked with Gene at the shooting gallery. They were in high school at the time, and they loved that. And it was a great place to work. I mean, you never knew what was going to happen medically. I mean, I don't like roller coasters, but I had to climb up the Chicago Loop because somebody had a heart attack.
Oh, my goodness.
And of course, there were the whole crew to take care of. And I learned how to do movie set nursing on the Fury, and then ended up with my business doing many, many movies in Chicago, Dr. Detroit and Risky Business and things like that. It all started at Old Chicago with the Fury.
How interesting is that? What a great experience. You never know when you're in a position where, you know, where it'll take you. And look at that. So that's a great story.
And Mike Black, who was a trustee in Romeoville at the time, who was very young, I think the youngest trustee
he
they had, he worked there too. He was a very nice guy. Unfortunately, he's passed away now. But we met very, very interesting people there.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned about Robert Brindle because I've tried to go back and find pictures, kind of look to see, and a lot of the pictures, when you go back, you really can't, you know, you don't see them. I mean, you can't find anything that's real clear. Well, today I did kind of a shakedown. I suppose working for the village, shakedown's not the best terminology, but I called up our planning department, community development, and they came upstairs with all kinds of wonderful things that were hidden and like, you know, put away in files that maybe no one has ever looked at for a long time. And they were coming up with a book that had almost brand new looking postcards from back then, which I'm going to be sharing with the commission. And they had maps and they had a book and it had a very nice picture of Mr. Brindle. So it's kind of nice to hear what you have
He
to
was
say.
a very handsome man, very
Yes.
sophisticated,
I was
very
gonna say very
smart,
distinguished.
very nice, very
That
nice.
distinguishes what I thought
Yes.
when
Absolutely.
when I looked at the picture. You
He
know?
was from California.
Right.
It was.
He had an amusement park out in California called Magic Mountain. And so that's what got him into the amusement park business.
And he brought his whole family with him to work there.
When he
but
came to Bolingbrook in 1973, I want to set the scene a little bit as to what the village was all about. There were cornfields where Old Chicago is. The Earl Meisinger farm was there. And Earl Meisinger was born and raised on that farm. When he was 3 years old, he used to ride his tricycle across Route 53 which you can't do today anymore. And the village, Tom Grosseth was mayor at that time, and he ran on a program to bring business to Bolingbrook to increase the sales tax. And so he was very interested in Old Chicago. However, the land that they were looking at was on the south side of I-55, which was supposed to be Romeoville's land. However,
Yes.
Romeoville couldn't bring their sewer and water up there, but Bolingbrook could. So Bolingbrook went down and annexed all the property down there. So in retaliation, Romeoville went up Weber Road and annexed the farms up there. So when you ride down Weber Road before you get to I-55 and where you turn on Rodeo Drive, you see the big "Welcome to Romeoville" sign. That's because of Old Chicago. A couple other things we did at that time. We had a lot of turnover at the village board. We went through 4 mayors in 2 years and about 16 trustees. And in 1975, when the group ran, everyone pledged that they would be there and fill out their terms so that we would have some stability in the village to deal with Old Chicago, which was beginning to be built. Old Chicago was built out of concrete, and one of the first big problems Mr. Brindle ran into was with the concrete workers, because he didn't want to pay them what they wanted to pay, because we were a union area, and he wasn't accustomed to that. So there were a lot of cost overruns with the contractors, which ended up in his filing bankruptcy after a while. But the village, we had a very aggressive fire chief, Terry Drugan at the time, who would stand in front of us and say, "You need sprinkler systems, you need a fire engine with a ladder to go all the way up to
Dance on the Dome.
up to the dome." Right. So I don't know if you knew that or not, but there was a big lake underneath Old Chicago that fed the sprinkler system. And the planning department probably has some of those plans. But that was, the foundation was laid all over that. But it was a big concrete building, which did put Bolingbrook on the map. And I have to chuckle because I'm wearing my pin that I received, my button, which said that Old Chicago, my kind of town, Bolingbrook, Illinois, I-55 and Route 83.
Oops.
And we
Another-
were Route 53.
A
But we
cost
were
overrun.
cornfields. And when you would come up after it was built, when you would drive up I-55, you could see Old Chicago all the way from Plainfield. And you could see the lit dome, so you always knew where it was. We were Barber's Corners on the state maps until Old Chicago opened, and then finally the Bolingbrook name came on. In 1975, Kmart did a groundbreaking opposite Old Chicago for South Commons Mall, and they anchored the shopping center that was built on the east side of Route 53. So we had a department store there with Crawford's, and we had a Kmart, and we had a Perkins restaurant, and that's where the parents were supposed to go while the kids were on the rides, to kind of do a comparable there. We also put in a 3% amusement tax, which is still in existence today, and that brought in about $200,000 of other people's money into the village coffers, so that was really big for a village whose budget was about $2.5 million at that time.
Wow.
So that was the scene. It came from cornfields to the big building that we know today, which is, and then after it was torn down, then it became a Reno auto auction, and it still is an auto auction today. And when they auction off their vehicles, they do it all on the internet, so they are really the middleman for moving cars around the world. On Tuesdays, they take bids from all around the world. So what was part of Old Chicago has really kind of turned into a very interesting business today with the auto auction.
I always wanted them to advertise 20 minutes from the Chicago Loop to the Chicago Loop to get more people out there, but they wouldn't do it.
Right. And what
That
the
would've been
Chicago
good.
Loop was the first indoor upside-down roller coaster.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Had the corkscrew.
Right.
Yeah, I worked down in the amusement park the summer of 1979. I was 17 years old at the time. I was between my junior and senior year of high school. I had gotten a job there. My father had passed away the previous fall, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to help my mom out very much by babysitting, so it was really a godsend that Old Chicago was hiring. And so I went there with a friend of mine that I'd gone to high school with, and we both filled out applications and we both got jobs down in the amusement park. And it was really a fun place to work. I just so enjoyed going into work every day. It was like working at Disneyland or something. I got to run rides, I got to work in the balloon room. Occasionally I'd get to work in the shooting gallery. But the thing I remember most about being down in the amusement park is we had cooler music down there. The music that they played up in the rest of the mall was a continuous loop of Joplin-style ragtime, and it was the same music kind of continually over and over and over again. And getting to work down in the amusement park, you got to work near the main stage and see the groups perform. So it was really a lot of fun, and it provided me with a really steady paycheck to help my mom out. So it was a good experience for me, and I really enjoyed my time there.
You obviously weren't sick or in trouble, or we'd remember you.
Yes. Definitely.
It's a good
No,
thing.
I pretty much kept my nose clean.
Good.
Roseanne, you corresponded with me because you originally saw one of our history programs, and you enjoyed it so much, you know, how we kept in touch, but you told a really neat story about your experience about living in Bolingbrook and then
Right.
moving away. So would you elaborate a little?
Sure. I have lived in Bolingbrook since I was 9. We moved here in the winter of 1970, and I'd really never lived anyplace else until I met and married my husband, who was in the military. And of course, after that, for 20 years, we moved every 2 years, and I've just lived basically everywhere. I've lived in Colorado and South Dakota and Alaska, and once it got to be time to think about retiring, he said, well, we can move anywhere that there's a VA hospital, as long as we're near a military installation, I can retire anywhere. So just tell me where you want to move. And I said, I just want to go home. I just want to go back to Bolingbrook. That's all I want. And he said, okay. He says, well, let's start looking for a house. And we found a house that is the exact model home I grew up in.
Oh, that's neat.
Very nice.
That was such a good story. I really felt that it was important to share it. And another part of her life is that her mother-in-law is Carol Abbott. And for those of you who are involved in the community, you would remember Carol Abbott because she was in charge of our animal control
Right.
for a long time. Lovely person, and maybe all of you that are not saying you didn't meet her is because your dogs were very, very good.
Well, we were also married in her backyard, right here in Bolingbrook, so.
Wow, that's really neat. Well, we have another guest who joined us on our panel, and his name is Don Grigas. And Don, if you'd be so kind maybe to tell us a little bit about yourself, your involvement with Old Chicago, your involvement really in the community and what you've been doing.
Okay.
Okay.
I've been living here since 1975. Moved in with my sister. Back then it was the far western side of town by the high tension wires by Independence School.
Yeah.
And,
It's actually kind of funny when you think about it.
and I did work as a security guard at Old Chicago, probably just at the tail end of Gene's tenure. I think I started there in the late summer of 1979. I had just graduated. And of course, there weren't many jobs in journalism. And that's what I studied. And probably people might know me more for being the local journalist here for about the last 15 or 20 years. So I took the job as a security guard, but when I moved here in '75, I asked my sister, I was coming from the south side of Chicago, and I'd come out here once every 6 months or so, and she'd say, you got to get off of the exit where the Mr. Quick Burger is. And there was the Mr. Quick Burger was in the Commons Mall. And this time she said, well, now just look for the spaceship. And I thought, what are you talking about? And sure enough, when you got to Route 83 or so, you could see off in the distance this globe, it looked like, just hovering in air on the south side of 53. So that was an eye-opener for me. But no, I did work as security guard there from '79 to after they closed. Left there probably September of 1980. And for that year, again, that was a lot of fun because I'd never worked security. A little different, type of job, but I picked it up pretty quickly and had some good support people there. I'm not sure, I don't think you were there. I think Chuck Cohn might have been in charge of operations, and a guy named Ken Stednitz was my immediate supervisor.
Right. Yeah, he was my assistant chief when I was chief.
And by that time, they had closed off a portion of the stores in the mall. If the mall was a clock, a square-shaped clock, they put bulkheads up at about 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So you could get to some stores, but you couldn't get to the backside. But the park was still open. And really our job was to control crowds and also protect the property of the store owners. So, we had uniforms. They were brown pants, brown coats, very, very secure-looking things, but we didn't really carry stuff to alter anyone's behavior. There was one fellow who just loved the job, and he carried, I think he had, maybe shouldn't have carried it, maybe some mace. He had a billy club. But mostly we just had the walkie-talkie, and we'd rotate shifts all day long to 7 or 8 different spots. I don't know if you could verify that.
Yes, absolutely.
My favorite was outside at the guard shack, because you had to monitor the traffic coming in there for trucks and deliveries. And a lot of policemen would stop in and just say hello. So I got to know a lot of the officers in town. The one fellow was the sketch artist, Cat Ramirez. I don't know if people remember him. And he would always pull up whenever a shift started, and he'd talk to people for a while. So it was actually a nice place to have contacts, because you didn't really have contact with the people in the mall unless something was going wrong. But by that time, it wasn't, we never had to chase people down. It wasn't really a situation where, there were robberies going on or that kind of stuff. It was pretty sedate. The weekends were tough because it was very crowded. Towards the end, I think they made more money on concerts than they did sales tax from the mall itself. So people, and maybe not the parents, but a lot of teenagers and young adults would come in and do the park more than anything. But that's my background for working in Old Chicago.
That's really great. Since you mentioned some of the talent, I put together like a partial list of Old Chicago performers, and I know since we have Historic Preservation Commission members, except one young one who might be like 19, who this isn't going to mean anything to her, but Tommy James and the Shondells, the Coasters, Chubby Checker, Chuck Berry, Peter Tork, Jan and Dean, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Rip Taylor, Sha-Na-Na, the Ramones, the Shirelles. I like the fact that Blood, Sweat, and Tears was there. The Hudson Brothers, Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive, right? Did she do that? I don't know.
She did.
Thank you, thank you. The Guess Who, that's pretty big. And Rick Nelson, they have Rick Nelson written there, but quite frankly, I knew him as Ricky Nelson. And I love this because I love science fiction. The Star Wars robots were there. C-3PO and R2-D2. And then Carl Wallenda. So, as a matter of fact, I think when he was there, then right after that was when he had the accident and died.
That was his last successful walk.
Yeah,
Was
'cause-
at Old Chicago, because he got caught in the breeze somewhere in South America or something.
Yeah.
So we were walking under him.
They
It was-
had us
it was like,
walking
what are we
under
gonna
him in
do, catch
case
him?
he fell, It was a long fall. Needed a mattress.
Yeah, we had to walk the whole park with him, but we're down underneath, and we kept saying to each other, if he falls, what are we going to do?
We had fireworks there with noise only. Do you remember that? Noise only fireworks once. We had regular fireworks another time, and we had a woman that they were calling me that she had had a heart attack, but really her blanket caught on fire and she got burned on her rear end.
Oh.
So it was a little different than a heart attack. But we had a lot of things go on. There were a lot of things that went on. And there were some serious things. There was a woman stabbed at the front door
Wow.
by her ex-husband, at her child's birthday party.
Oh, my goodness.
And fortunately, we took care of her and she made it through. There were situations that were difficult sometimes for you. There were gang members that came there.
Right.
So there were things that happened, but they were all controlled,
This is probably a little childish of me to ask Bolingbrook Community Television, but any chance if I hold it really steady, can you zoom in? Well, I'm pretending it's like Johnny Carson. Oh, there it is! Yay! We have other memorabilia too on our table, that we wanted to share. And I don't know which is the best way to do it. I don't know if you want to, if I hold it up, this is a nicer mug. I didn't feel I had the right to can you, oh, there it is. Isn't that nice, Nice gold. Had a lot of neat things in there. And then, of course, just in case, the infamous beer mug. Don, did you ever drink out?
Well, was that at the
Beer
Beer
garden.
Gardens? That
Ah,
was a really interesting place. The owner of Clementine's sold his share of Clementine's and opened up the beer garden when the place first opened. And it was very successful for many years. I mean, it was kind of a spot where people would go and relax and have a couple of beverages. I can say that I probably did after work a few times with the
They
other
had the
security guards.
best fried chicken in the world.
They had good stuff.
They did.
They did.
And they had the beautiful view of the park right from there. They had so many windows, and you could see everything going on.
that sounds so neat.
They had crepes there. They had the French restaurant.
Oh, yeah, the crepes they made them with Grand Marnier.
That sounds divine. Did you want it, Karen? Were you?
Jean brought this, actually, it's a newsletter from Old Chicago, the Old Chicago Gazette, the Cobblestone.
This was the Cobblestone Examiner. was the name. This was the newspaper that management put out about what was going on, maybe different employees, what was going to be coming to, Old Chicago, upcoming events and whatever. And, you know what? You were talking about the mayor. The mayor writes.
Oh, how neat
So
is
there,
that?
I'll turn that
That
around.
wasn't that Buddy Farnan's creation? Mayor,
Yes, it was
Yeah.
actually. The costume cost a fortune. But yeah, so the mayor of Old Chicago
Okay, and the mayor's name?
was, I don't have my glasses.
Charlie Baffle.
Charlie
Oh,
Baffle.
that's right. Oh, my
Yeah, Charlie
God.
Baffle. And I don't know, I had asked Judy Broadway before the show started, really to talk a little bit about, because all I remember him is on the front of the brochure that we have in our possession, and it's just a caricature of him. But he actually, she told me he was just like, if you went by Ronald McDonald's, and Ronald would be there and talk to you and everything. He talked and, could you... And he also, you said that he did something else besides being the mayor. He also was, I think the baffle part came in because he was a magician, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying, I don't know.
Wasn't
I'm trying to
that-
think
that-
who was actually
The guy with the white hair?
Tommy?
Tommy.
Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy the Clown.
Oh, yeah, he was
Right.
Tommy the Clown. What a creative guy. Like, at Christmas time, we would have a parade through the mall. And every single night at a certain time, there'd be the parade. Well, this Tommy, who was a clown, and I think he came from Disneyland, very, very creative. We had all these golf carts that we'd zip around the mall in and stuff like, especially when it was closed security, we had a ball. He took all of these golf carts and decorated them like floats. So they had Christmas trees on them, they had all this stuff, and then somebody would be in there, you couldn't even see them though, and they're driving. This just looks like a float, and it's going all around, and I remember the Santa Claus we had was the greatest I've ever seen.
I still have the Santa Claus outfit.
Yes, Karen has the Santa
I
Claus.
inherited that.
And she even had the refrigerator. from
That all the
first
stars
day.
kept their popping. And you know what? It's lasted 30-some years.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. Really, and you have to think, if you have an area where, when we're mentioning the names and the talent of the people that were actually there, if you think about it, you probably had a lot of creative people that were looking for an opportunity to be a part of, the talent and, so.
I think one you didn't mention was David Soul, from Starsky and
Oh,
Hutch.
I didn't find
Yeah, he
that.
was
Too
there.
bad.
And also Bob
He had
Crane was
laryngitis.
there, Hogan's
Oh,
Heroes.
good.
Yeah.
You know Bob Crane? He was just there visiting with his wife and children. And he didn't want to go on the rides and stuff. His wife took the children for that, and I just stayed with him, and we went through the mall. And he was telling me about the different instruments he played. So I said, let's go into the theater. And we went in the theater. This guy could play almost every instrument you could think of.
Like Wayne
He
Newton.
was, oh yeah, he was playing the drums, he was playing the horn, he was playing, what a fabulous guy. Fabulous guy.
And David Soul was a singer. He had a band in addition to being on Starsky and Hutch. And then I later worked on the TV series The American Dream with his ex-wife, Karen Carlson, as a matter of fact. So.
Wow, that is amazing. We also have some things that are behind us, but what I wanted, when I was trying to stress the point about, you know, how this continues to live on in our memories and is expressed as a part of our history, this throw or blanket, if you can pan on it, there is an actual picture in a prominent place of old Chicago. And you know, it says a place to remember, you know, and I just think that it's really neat because a lot of times, you know, old Chicago was given like the name of, you know, people would say, oh, the white elephant, you know, and they started feeling like it was a thorn or a pain, you know, for the, you know, for the community. But actually, and I felt bad because working at Village Hall, I didn't want to hear, you know, that negativity coming our way. But I, as a municipal clerk, at one time I went to a meeting and there was a professor there, and he told me to shake off all of that because he was currently at that time was an investor in the Mall of America, which if any of you had an opportunity to go to the Mall of America, there is that similarity of having that amusement, you know, and he just said that poor old Chicago, it was ahead of its time, and it wasn't put in a position where it really could thrive, and there were so many issues, you know, with management and things of that nature, and it actually killed it.
They didn't advertise enough. You know, I wrote some of my memories about it in a book that I wrote called Nurses on Our Own, and it was published by St. Martin's Press, and Avon is still in print, and I have some of the stories about old Chicago in there too. So it is on the map. I don't think there'll ever be another place like it. I mean, you know, really, it was so unique and innovative. It really was. And it's a shame because it was wonderful. You know, on holidays, I can remember on Christmas, we used to get a lot of Asian people there. There were certain holidays that we got different people who didn't celebrate that particular holiday. But we had thousands of people there many times, thousands of people. It wasn't like it was an abandoned place. It was busy, a lot.
And every Christmas, I have to say, Ray Kroc was fabulous. Every Christmas, he rented the amusement park for 4 hours for his employees and their families. He dressed up as Santa Claus, and he'd be in the circus, in the ring, you know, the circus ring, and sit on a big chair, and he'd have this huge bag giving all of the children gifts.
For those of you who don't recognize that name, Ray
Sorry.
Kroc, you want to?
McDonald's.
McDonald's, yeah. So, you know, yeah, it's just very, very interesting. And I wanted to say, you know, I will mention later, but we love memorabilia. And if anyone out there watches the show and, you know, wants to make a contribution, and we'll have some information on where you can contact us.
Bob Evans came there too, by the way.
Wow.
When Bob Evans opened up the Bob Evans, right there,
which was
Bob
down on
Evans was at Old
Frontage Road.
Chicago. Remember that? Yeah.
That's amazing. I also wanted to talk a little bit about like the night and special events that were going on there, because it's kind of amazing during that time too, you know, some of the transition, because some people talked about like the hippie stage and, you know, the peace signs and everything, but it also was, there was a place in there, I believe, called the Windy City Disco.
Yeah.
And, you know, naturally they had private parties and they had teen disco nights, staying alive, staying alive. Radio station promotion, rock concerts, WLS, Big 89 Countdown. There was broadcast live from Old Chicago on New Year's Eve in 1979. We talked about Jerry Lewis's muscular dystrophy telethon. There was actually a drive-up collection in the parking lot, and of course, remote broadcasts from inside. I mentioned about the fireworks on 4th of July. There was Pepsi Challenge, Miss Teenage Chicago pageant, and then of course that wonderful movie, you know, The Fury. depending on your taste and what you like to watch movie-wise, were filmed both in the ride area and the shopping mall. Are there any other?
Well, Bob Surratt and John Landecker were both there. They did the wasn't that the Jerry Lewis telethon that they did?
Yes.
I know we were working all night for
And,
that.
oh, and then there were the seances for,
Oh, my goodness.
wait, what's his name on Halloween? The
Oh,
one that's,
does anyone in the audience remember, usually, is he the one with the long black hair and
yeah,
not
no, I mean,
Svengali?
the one that he died, so they'd have these seances every,
Oh.
like, near Halloween for
Oh,
him.
Houdini.
Oh, there
That's it,
you
that's
go.
it.
Good,
Yeah,
Judy.
they'd have these seances for Houdini every
Yeah,
year.
He was supposed to come back on Halloween.
I know.
Ah.
And I sat there watching, I mean, nothing really happened.
That's my birthday. I
It was
guess I wasn't
fun.
there that day.
Yes.
There is something I want to mention, because when I was looking through all of the information that I received today from our community development department, they gave me some of these newsletters that was actually called the Old Chicago News. Now, I believe it came not from within the Old Chicago community, but from the development community. And but one thing that was in there, they said that, I mean, it's kind of amazing to think of it, but they said that tilt-up construction to be used on the exterior and interior walls will consist of 331 giant slabs of molded steel reinforced cement, some measuring 55 feet high. Total weight of these walls will exceed 26,000 pounds. The 45,000 square foot mall to be the first, and the world's. That's what's so wonderful about it, is that we got to make sure we point out that it was the world's first enclosed combination theme park and shopping center. There was something else that I really have to talk about, and Judy came back to sit with us on the panel. Don has to go do security someplace else. Just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. But in this article of information, because this is an intriguing part of Old Chicago's history too, is the lions that were outside. And it says, there are some things in life that can't be bought for money. Take, for instance, the two magnificent bronze lions that guard the entrance to the Art Institute of Chicago. When Robert R. Brindle, president of Recreation Retail Builders, Inc., offered to buy the lions for Old Chicago, Art Institute president E. Lawrence Chalmers Jr. said, never, never, never. But Chalmers graciously gave Brindle an alternative. While we could not consider selling our famous lions for your fascinating project, we're happy to do everything possible to facilitate their reproduction, Chalmers answered. As a result, sculptor Emil Thumb duplicated the lions that will guard the entrance to Old Chicago. The 10 feet long, 8 feet tall standing lions were being reproduced at the International Design Corp in Chicago. Brindle's particular interest in obtaining the Art Institute lions is based on his plan to authentically depict turn-of-the-century Chicago, or at least to come as close to it as they could. What better greeters for the entryway than the giant lions sculpted for the Art Institute in 1893? So now, Judy, you might want to give us a little bit of insight to what happened with those lions, unless you ladies, I know, of course, we talk about time and age and things you could do and things you couldn't do. I do remember when the lions were still standing, climbing up there and getting on the lions,
Yes.
which I think were probably, or on one line at least, because the other one was way on the other side. But, I have to think that that was kind of a popular thing
It
for
was.
people to do,
Yeah, a lot of people snapped photographs of their kids up there or themselves up there. It was a very grand looking building from the outside.
Yep. One of the things we did when Mary Ann Koslick had a birthday party one year, she had a scavenger hunt around the village. And we had to take Polaroid pictures of ourselves in different areas. And one of them was we had to photographed the team on top of the Lions at Old Chicago. So we were buzzing around town that night for her birthday party, and the Lions were included. Next to Old Chicago was an auto park was put in, and Joe Levy, who was the Mitsubishi dealer, was one of the first auto dealers to come into the auto park. And he ended up purchasing the Lions and moving them up to Skokie, where he had his other dealership when he closed the one in Bolingbrook. His parents were the biggest Buick dealers in the Chicagoland area during the 50s, and they established the Joseph and Sarah Levy Foundation, which is our Levy Center in Bolingbrook, which is located on Canterbury, is named after his parents and the foundation, which paid for a third of that building. But Joe Levy bought the Lions, put them on the roof of his dealership, and painted them purple and white for Northwestern's colors, because he had graduated from Northwestern. And of course, the Art Institute wasn't real happy about that, and there is a news broadcast that he videotaped from one of the channels discussing what they were going to do with these Lions. And he ended up selling them to somebody in McHenry County. So they are somewhere in northern Illinois. No one knows exactly where. But Joe Levy doesn't have them anymore.
Speaking of the Lions, for my Christmas room, Karen found me 2 lions. So they sit at the entrance.
You know, it was so interesting because
Yes.
I was at a party with somebody, you know, I do the television show Outspoken with Karen, and Dave Geslick, who sometimes co-hosts it, threw this big party for Christmas, and it was an all-white party. He had a dress in white, and they had one of these white elephant deals. Well, some people, I guess, didn't know what a white elephant was because they bought brand new things. So I got the thing that everybody wanted first, and somebody took it away from me, and people kept taking things away and changing it. And at the end, there was this beautiful little package sitting there under the tree. And I ended up with it. And I opened it up, and it was 2 little lions, just exactly what she needed for her Old Chicago. I said it was like it was meant to be, because I wouldn't have even known where to find them, you know.
That is amazing.
And because it's a village, you've got to find something small enough. You can't go
Yeah.
get, you know,
The actual size.
right, yeah, the actual size, or, you know,
And these were
anything
our
large.
paperweights or something anyway. They were the perfect
Yeah,
size,
they're
yeah.
perfect. So it guards Old Chicago in my Christmas room. And then we didn't mention that across from Old Chicago was a movie theater. You know, we didn't say that. And when The Fury came out, of course, when it came to the Bolingbrook movie theater, it's like everyone that lived in Bolingbrook was there that first night for that movie, including myself and my children. And I remember we were in the middle, and they came to a part, and you saw my son walking toward the thing, and he stood up and he goes, "There I am," and everybody goes, "Go Rick!" I mean, the movie theater went crazy, but it just shows a small town. You know, the film was done at Old Chicago. Now you have people who live in Bolingbrook who were in it. It was very exciting.
Yeah, especially, you know, like you said, the extras that were in there,
Yeah.
and, you know, I'm sure everybody wanted to do just what your son did, you know.
I let him
and,
take a week off school.
her
to
other
do it.
children, your other children were in too, weren't some?
They were.
And my brothers were in it. And you know, working on movie sets is not always glamorous. I mean, I've done many of them now. They're like 18 hours a day. So the kids were there as extras, but they got nice checks too.
They did.
For doing it. So they really enjoyed it, you know.
They did.
Well, I wanted to mention that what I was trying to do was to get some information from people to kind of feel, you know, what their memories were. And I found some information out on the internet, and it said, "Old Chicago lives on in our memories." And it said, by 1981, the dream was over, plagued by management problems and lacking the kind of stores that bring repeat business. The mall was shuttered and fell to the wrecking ball 5 years later. Old Chicago has been gone for over 32 years, but its fans remain constant. Type in Old Chicago on any internet search engine, and the pages devoted to its memory serve as its shrine. Here are some of the memories that I received and found online. Tom and Robert Stewart of Romeoville met while working together at Old Chicago and held their wedding reception in the park's beer garden. You know, it'd be fun to see if we could find them and see if they're still, you know, yeah. People still stop by Village Hall and ask about Old Chicago. A brochure featuring old photos and a brief history of the mall was put together by Joan Heiberger, a former member of the Bolingbrook Historic Preservation Commission, and I actually have it on the front on our display here. Well, Diane Smith, who is a member of our Historic Preservation Commission and is here this evening, she talked about her husband, Roland Smith, purchased her a beautiful opal, emerald, and diamond ring from the jewelry store that was in front as you walked inside Old Chicago. She doesn't remember the name of it, but she believes they still are in business in a different town.
Lord and Hunt.
Lord and Hunt, Diane. There you go. He purchased it to match an outfit I had that he liked on me. In fact, I still have the outfit. It also was emerald green in color, and she can still wear it. She proudly says she can still wear it.
No, we
Lucky.
Yeah. Jim Cole, he said, first place I ever had a Mr. Pibb. I have no idea why I remember that, but I recall it was very tasty. There was a gentleman named Chuck Kempshire. He said he just flat out misses Old Chicago. On Facebook, we tried to do some networking, and we received 35 people that liked our site, and they shared with 11 other sites, which is great. Adrienne Beal, who's also a member of our Historic Preservation Commission, she said she lived in Woodridge at the time, but took her teenagers there. Her son and his girlfriend also went to the concert. Her son, yes. Bob Kalis, who works for our Public Works Department, he worked at Old Chicago while he was still in high school. He worked in the maintenance department from 1979 to 1980, and he said he really loved working there. Linda Wilhelm, a local business person, Allegra Printing, she said, I remember having lots of dates at Old Chicago. She loved walking around. It was inexpensive, and you could have lots of fun. The guy she was dating at the time was not so nice. He went bye-bye like Old Chicago. There was a former employee, now I don't know if you remember him, but he actually was Greg Eshon. So there's so many other people. Oh, they're only giving me like
That's why
2
we want to
minutes.
have a reunion.
Yeah, and we talked about that because we really do need to have a second show. The commission is planning on doing another show on Old Chicago. We're also going to post all these memories that people had. They were great. We want you to check out the Bolingbrook Historic Preservation Commission's website to view detailed information on the timeline from 1973 to 1986, which was published by the Met newspaper in 1986, and the Old Chicago quiz. We would like to acquire any items from Old Chicago as a donation or a loan. Also, please go on Facebook and friend the commission page. They will keep you posted on their events and plans to celebrate the village's 50th birthday in 2015. Thank you to the panel. It was wonderful having you on Historically Speaking. Thank you to the Historic Preservation Commission, Bolingbrook Community Television, and Bolingbrook Community Development Department. For more information, call 630-226-8411, and please watch our program, Historically Speaking, because Bolingbrook keeps making our history available to you. Thank you, and see you next time. Thank you, everybody. It's nice.